Hello, I'm Dan Lewis, and welcome to Biblical Insights with Pastor Del. And now, Pastor Del Demosthenes.
When you think of Moses, somebody who liberated thousands, when you think of Moses, somebody who stood in the presence of the Lord and received the commandments of God, that not only shaped the life of his contemporaries, but also shaped the life of many others, including us. When you think of the role that Moses played in the life of people around him, in the life of people who will come even after him and after us, we are grateful for the fact that the Lord brought Moses this way. But you know what? Even though the story does not always celebrate these individuals, there would not be a person who received the Ten Commandments. There would not be a great liberator of thousands without these many mothers in the life of Moses. And there's an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child. The notion is that to raise somebody to become somebody of importance, to become older and mature, where they could do the things that they need to do in life, it would not just take one person. It will take many. And we notice that the life of Moses was very evidence of this very reality. It took two mothers to raise Moses. So this morning, as I proceed with my sermon, I want you to pause for a minute and think about your own mother, your own biological mother, and think about the many mothers that the Lord placed strategically along your side from the time you were born till now. The many mothers who nurtured you, the many mothers who got you to this point. I want you to reflect on them. And for some of you, it will be easy. Some names will start popping up. Yesterday, I was reading a book where the author was talking about a mother for him. He says, as a child, he never realized that he was special in the sense that he had some learning differences. He had some difficulties. And he says he never really realized that because he had a teacher who was like a mother figure to him, who nurtured him in such a way that when he would stumble over words, when he would read things that were not in the text, where most other people would have get frustrated with him, but instead the teacher come around and sat with him and help him gain confidence as a reader. It says it took him later in medical school to realize that he had learning differences, that he had dyslexia, he had ADHD, which made it difficult for him to learn, but he never realized it until he got to medical school. And he says he looked back and he could only point among many to that teacher who gave him that self-confidence. As a reader, he says now he not only, graduated from Harvard, he graduated from medical school, he became a doctor. And he read books after books to the point where he ended up writing books that people like me are reading. And he says he saw the connective thread to his own development from that one teacher who sat with him and gave him the self-confidence. My brothers and my sisters, this gentleman is not the only person sitting here. Many of you, if you are who you are today, if you stand where you are today, if you're able to do the things that you are doing today, that's because the Lord strategically placed certain individuals in your life. People who stood in the gap for you. People who gave you the self-confidence to do things. And Moses benefited from the many mothers in his life. The context in which Moses was born, many folks would have said, there's no way Moses should have survived. The context under which Moses was born make it clear that a Moses should have never survived. Exodus chapter 1 says, a Pharaoh came into power who forgot everything about the role that Joseph played in Egypt. Those of you who knew the story knew years before Joseph journeyed to Egypt, he became second in power, and because he helped Egypt survive some economic difficulties and famine, he helped them survive, so he became important. And during that time, he had the privilege of bringing his brothers and his family to Egypt. And later on, there became a powerful nation within Egypt, a powerful group. A king came to power, the text says, and he knew nothing about Joseph. When he looked around, he saw people who were not Egyptians per se, growing in numbers. And he says to himself, if these people continue to grow and become powerful, they'll become a threat to us. And when if there is a war, they will side with the enemy. And he came up with a plan. What the country should do is to annihilate the Israelites. First, he gave the commands to the midwives. It says, any baby who is born, just kill him. The midwife says they didn't want to do it. So the midwives came up with an excuse and says, the Hebrew women are so strong. They don't wait for us to show up. The king says, okay, going forward, there is a decree that any baby born must be thrown to the Nile. Period. This is the context under which Moses will be born. My brothers and my sisters, many of you sitting here would not have survived, including Moses, because there were circumstances surround your birth that made it difficult for your survival. Maybe your parents never talked to you about that. In the case of Moses, when Moses was born, the text says his mother became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. She broke the law. She broke the law in order to allow Moses to survive 3 months. Moses, who will become the great liberator, Moses will become the person who received the law and passed it on to our generation. Moses was born in a time when the power that be wanted Moses killed. Moses should not have survived. But Moses' biological mother couldn't bear doing it. She put her life in danger. She did what she needed to do to hide Moses for 3 months. Can you imagine? Those of you who've gone through the process, what it must have felt like to hide a child in a hostile environment for 3 months. The little time that I spent around newborn, I know they cry. And sometimes, especially when they don't get their way, they cry incessantly. Can you imagine being the mother, what you needed to do to keep that child quiet enough so your neighbors do not go and rat on you? Moses' survival happened in a tough situation. And I'm sure some of you, if you've had the privilege to talk with your parents, particularly your mothers, they might have told you stories. They might have told you the context in which you were born was not easy. They sacrificed quite a bit to get you to that point. And Moses' mother did what she could. And then she used her ingenuity, she used her creativity, and began to think about how to give Moses the best chance of surviving long term. The text did not say it, but we could assume what was going on in her mind. She knew the pattern of Pharaoh's daughters' bathing practices. She learned it, pay attention to it. And she learned and taught herself how to create a little protective gear to place Moses in it and study the pattern of Pharaoh's daughters' bathing practices, and knew that if she has any chance of giving Moses a long-term survival, she has to make some tough decisions. The text says she crafted a little basket, put tar in it to protect it and make it waterproof. And she used Moses' older sister, strategically planted and put Moses in that little basket, and told the older sister to follow along with it, because she knew prayerfully that, hoping Pharaoh's daughter and the crew will take notice. Imagine what it must have been like for a mother to know that the kid you work so hard for, you struggle so hard for, the only way to give him a chance to survive is to strategically release them in an environment and praying that the good Lord will do the rest. As parents, sometimes you may have tough decisions to make. You may know, in order for your kids to get to the next level, you might need to release them in the care potentially of somebody else. You may need to let them go to a place where, to yourself, you might not want to. You may need to entrust them in the care of the Lord only. And Moses' mother had to do that. And as the text says, when the little basket is floating around, Pharaoh's daughter and her attendants were walking around, and they noticed the little baby. They noticed the basket floating around, and there was a baby in it. They quickly went and fetched it. At the right time, the right moment, the older sister asked a poignant question. Do you want a wet nurse. And Pharaoh's daughter, who didn't have a kid of her own, she said yes. And Moses' sister went and got Moses' mom. So Moses grew up in the palace with his mom teaching him what it meant to be a Jew living in an Egyptian palace. She had to make certain sacrifices. And likewise, Pharaoh's daughter, even though she doesn't always get a lot of credit, because oftentimes when people think about those who contribute to the evolution of the faith, we often think about folks who are firm believers. But sometimes, not just sometimes, all the times, God used non-believers to advance his cause. And Pharaoh's daughter had a lot to do with the advancement of the faith, the liberation of these people. For her own reason, she accepted the little baby. She took him as her own. I don't know what she told her father. It would have been wonderful to have that to hear that conversation. Do you know who you just... The people that I threatened to kill, that's the people you bringing into my house? It must have been a tough conversation. My brothers and my sisters, sometime the Lord may use you to bring shelter, to bring protection to people that others trying to hurt. Pharaoh's daughter let herself be used by God as a vehicle. How ironic! That the very people that Pharaoh decreed to have killed, the one who will liberate them will get an education within his household. Pharaoh's daughter brought Moses in, and Moses' mother made the commitment to teach her son who he is as a people. And Moses came of age. My brothers and my sisters, what we have, opportunities we have, privileges we have, they're not only for our own sake. The Lord is looking for incubators. The Lord is looking for safe places to raise liberators for the next generation. So maybe you're sitting here and you're like, I didn't give birth to a kid. I didn't work. What's the big deal? Another one passed through in front of me while I'm bathing, so to speak. I'm so busy, I don't have time for this. Pharaoh's daughter allowed herself to be moved and stop and pick the little kid. Unbeknown to her, she has no idea what he would become later. But she became a mother to him. She became a mother to him. She raised him. She taught him. She gave him opportunities to grow and learn the things that he's going to need to learn. In your time, in your place, it's never too late to take somebody who's among the lost, somebody that society is threatened to eradicate it. Somebody that society is saying, we'd rather not have them. We'd rather not have them among us. Imagine what it must be like to be the people like Pharaoh's daughter who give shelter to folks that the Lord is trying to protect. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you don't have a lot of time. But sometimes it's a lot easier to watch the news and see another kid going to prison, to see another kid overdosing, to see another kid just got in another trouble again. Sometimes it's a lot easier to say, oh, there they go again. Killing themselves, ruining themselves, and ruining our community. Have you thought for a minute what it might be like if you give an hour of your time mentoring that kid? Have you thought for a minute what it might be like to say, let me go and volunteer for a minute? Maybe they're doing what they're doing because they don't know any better. Maybe in your powerless, so to speak, you might expand their dream and give them the capacity to dream beyond what their community is allowing them to see. Have you ever thought about that? Some of us survive because our dream got bigger and we don't get into trouble. I could attest to that. Because I got a crazy dream when I was younger, there's certain things I never got into. Not because I didn't want to. Not because I wasn't wired to. But I got a crazy dream that was bigger than my environment, that kept me from getting into certain trouble. I did get in some trouble, but not others. You know, within your community, there are many other communities. Within your community, there are many other communities living right in front of you. In Egypt, there was another community of people who were isolated, people who had no rights, people that others were trying to kill. Yet, there was also a palace. So, Pharaoh's daughter gave an opportunity to a young Moses. Have you ever thought about what it must be like to expose somebody to something that you take for granted, but for them, this will be the first time? Some of us eat out all the time, right? And I'm one of them. Have you ever thought for a minute what it must be like to take somebody, a kid who've never, been to a restaurant, where, they would have to use real knives? Because you've been privileged, you take it for granted as if everybody in your community have had it. But that's not true. Have you ever thought about what it must be like to enter a household where there is no F this, F that, things banging all over the place? You ever thought about that? There are kids looking for shelter because their household are like so dysfunctional, so disruptive. Even though they're kids, they've seen things, they've witnessed things, they've experienced things that no kids got any business experiencing. Have you ever thought for a minute, maybe little Johnny who's hanging out with your kid, he doesn't want to go home? Maybe it's because home is so terrible. He can't say it. But the only peace he got is school and your place. You ever thought about what it must be like to be part of that community? And God used this young princess to give Moses an opportunity, even though Moses had no business surviving. But God is going to make sure that Moses survived. So God used a princess to adopt Moses. So Moses got a great education. So this morning, as you do, as I do, if you love the Ten Commandments, you owe a debt of gratitude to Moses, and you owe a debt of gratitude to Pharaoh's daughter. And likewise, I'm encouraging you to become the Pharaoh's daughter of your time, that generation later will hold a debt of gratitude to you. One of the top basketball coaches that I know around here, he talked about how when he was growing up, it was somebody else who raised him, unofficially. So they pretty much took him in. Now, he's traveled places, his name is big in the limelight, but he recognized that somebody else gave him a safe place. So, what's my point this morning? Who we are today, we owe it to not only our biological parents, but we owe it to the many nurturers. Some of them we've forgotten their names. But Moses received one of the laws that Moses received in Exodus chapter 20, verse 12 says, honor your mother and your father, so you will have long life in this land. So, as you reflect on a day like this, give thanks for your many mothers. The many people who took you in, who allow you to survive from the very beginning till today. The many people, including the one who gave birth to you, and I know for some, the story might be a little more complicated, but if nothing else, say thank you to the Lord on behalf of your mother, your biological mother. She allowed you to survive the birth process. Even if the relationship later becomes problematic, give thanks for that. Because you wouldn't be who you are today if she didn't make that decision to allow you to survive in a hostile environment. And for those of us who've had great biological mothers, whether they're alive or pass on, use today to give thanks for them. And additionally, let us journey through the beginning and think about the many adopted, many mother-like figures from the teachers, from the community leaders, from the aunts that we've had around us who loved us, guided us, protected us from a lot of nonsense that enabled us to get to this point. So on a day like this, if they're still alive, find a way to express your gratitude to them. Because they invested in you. Additionally, those of us who've been invested into, let us be the mothers to the folks who need it now. Let us be mothers to the folks who will need it now. And the Lord will allow you to see something. Just like Pharaoh's daughter noticed the little basket. Maybe it will be on your way home, you'll drive and you'll hear something, you'll see something, you'll see some kids whose life, you're not psychic, you're not prophets, but you pretty much know. If they stay where they are, you could pretty much finish the story. Let us start disrupting those stories. Let us become the kind of places, the kind of household, the kind of people who will say, I'll take one in and mentor them. I'll help one. So if not before, but going forward, you could say, you know what? I help a group of folks who's on track to be annihilated, who's on track to get hurt, in this tough and hostile environment. Their kids, if you follow the story of the grandparents and you follow the story of the parents, you could pretty much finish the sentence. If little Johnny stay in that environment without some guidance, little Johnny will be the same thing as what his predecessors have been. So why do the Lord give us opportunities that we have as a church? We want to start offering things where kids wouldn't necessarily come because they're so hungry for the gospel, even though that's important. We want to offer a shelter for a couple of hours where mom could get a little reprieve and dad could get a little reprieve and says, son, where you were, I don't know how to protect you outside of the school system. We want to be the community where some kids, if they get inspired to go to college, that's because they rub shoulders with people outside of their neighborhoods. If they get inspired to do something beyond what mom and dad has done, that's because they witness it outside of that community. So we as individuals can become those mothers, and we as a church can become those institutions that say, we'll offer certain things, not only because our own community need it, we'll offer it because we know kids, that's the only way they get some clean interaction with people who will not take advantage of them. So, in this Mother's Day, let us be grateful to the mothers who nurture us and shape our lives, and let us become those mother figures who will nurture and shape the lives of the next liberators that you and I have no idea who they are in our midst. Guarantee you, when Moses' biological mother let him survive, she had no idea that he was going to be that important. All she knew is that she loved him as a son. Guarantee you, when Pharaoh's daughter saved Moses, she had no idea that he was going to become who he did. She did it because it felt right. And there are people you're going to invest time in today. You have no idea who they will become later. But the Lord already knows and is looking for a space to grow his next leader. Will you be that place? Let us go to the Lord in prayer this morning. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for your grace and your mercy that you extend every day. We give you thanks for the folks that you place in our lives, that guided us to the place where we are today. Lord, we also want to express our gratitude to you and be that same type of individuals, that same type of institution that you put it, that you made available to us when we were coming up. So others who need it right now will find it within us, will find it within our own institution, Lord. We offer this prayer in the precious name of your Son.